Thank you for joining. My name is Jessie, and I'm the Prevention and Community Engagement Manager at the Dragonfly Center. Today, we will be exploring how educators and teachers can recognize, respond to, and prevent online child sexual exploitation. Some of the content we will be discussing today can be triggering. We will discuss instances of sexual violence, sexual abuse, abuse of minors, and other potentially disturbing content. Please take care of yourself while moving through this webinar. By the end of this session, you will be able to define online child sexual exploitation and its impact, recognize grooming tactics and red flags, understand legal responsibilities and reporting protocols in Alberta, implement prevention strategies within your school, and support students and caregivers in digital safety. Online child sexual exploitation is a growing concern. With the increasing use of technology, children are at higher risks of being targeted by offenders. As educators and teachers, you play a critical role in safeguarding children. Before we dive into the content, take a moment to reflect on the challenges that you or your school are currently experiencing in regards to digital safety. What concerns brought you specifically to this webinar? You may want to jot down some key thoughts or discuss with colleagues after completing this session. Thinking about these challenges now will help you connect with the information presented throughout this webinar and apply it to your own educational setting. It's important to understand that while the age of consent in Canada is 16, the Child and Youth Protection Act makes it illegal for anyone to generate, share, or possess intimate images of anyone under the age of 18. This law is in place to protect young people from harm, exploitation, and long-term consequences related to non-consensual photo sharing. When discussing intimate images, it's also important to recognize that young people may engage in image sharing in many different ways. Some cases may involve coercion or exploitation by peers or adults, while others may be experimental in nature. Regardless of their intent, once an image has been shared, it can be difficult to control where it ends up and how it's used. As educators, we can take a trauma-informed and non-judgmental approach when addressing this issue. Rather than focusing on blame or punishment, we can create an environment where students feel safe to ask for help if an image has been shared without their consent. Supporting students means having open conversations about digital safety, consent, and healthy relationships, while reinforcing the importance of seeking help from trusted or safe adults if they find themselves in vulnerable situations. Non-consensual photo sharing can take many forms, including voyeurism, online sexual abuse, upskirting, and sexting. Advances in technology have made it even easier to capture and distribute images instantly, often leading to lasting impacts to children and youth. Like all forms of online and in person violence, non consensual photo sharing is about power and control. The person sharing the image may be seeking social validation, a sense of desirability, or attempting to manipulate the photo taker into compliance. When the person refuses to comply, the image may be shared as a form of coercion or as a punishment. This issue has become incredibly widespread, with nearly 1 in 5 youth having self reported experiencing their intimate image being shared without their consent. The emotional and psychological impacts of this type of violation can be profound, including feelings of betrayal, embarrassment, and fear of further harm. It's important to recognize that non consensual image sharing can have devastating consequences for victims, including cyberbullying, in person bullying, harassment, depression, anxiety, and withdrawal from social situations. In some cases, victims may feel pressured to comply with further demands out of a fear of future exposure. This behavior can intersect with gender based violence, where young women and gender diverse individuals are disproportionately affected. The stigma and victim blaming associated with image sharing can discourage survivors from seeking support. As educators, we have a role to play in ensuring students understand that sharing someone's intimate image without consent is never acceptable and is actually illegal. We can foster open discussions about digital ethics, privacy, respect, and online forms of consent, while also providing guidance on what students can do if they experience or witness this kind of harm. A form of non consensual photo sharing can include sextortion. Sextortion occurs when an individual has or claims to have a sexual image of another person and uses it to coerce them into doing something they do not want to do. This can involve demands for more explicit images, money, or other forms of control over the victim. This includes in person controls as well. They may coerce them into sex or into a relationship. Sextortion can be facilitated by both strangers and peers. In some cases, offenders pose as someone else online, tricking individuals into sharing intimate images. In other cases, peers may exploit an existing relationship or trust to gain access to sensitive images and use those as leverage. The impact of sextortion can be devastating, leading to fear, anxiety, isolation, and in extreme cases, self harm or suicidal ideations. Victims often feel trapped and ashamed, which can prevent them from seeking help. It is crucial to reinforce that they are not at fault, they are not alone, and that support is available. As educators, it's essential to create an environment where students feel safe discussing these issues, providing resources, fostering digital literacy, and emphasizing that help is available can empower young people to recognize red flags and seek support. Similar to other forms of sexual violence, online sexual exploitation carries a significant amount of stigma, self blame, shame, and victim blaming. Many survivors feel isolated and afraid to seek help due to a fear of judgment or repercussions. Stigma surrounding online sexual exploitation can make it difficult for victims to disclose what happened to them. They may worry that they won't be believed, or that they will be blamed for their involvement, or that their experience will be denied or minimized. Shame and guilt often prevent young people from reaching out for support. They may internalize harmful messages that suggest that they were responsible for what happened, even though exploitation is never a victim's fault. Victim blaming is another significant barrier to support. When individuals or communities blame the victim rather than holding the perpetrators accountable, it reinforces harmful myths about sexual exploitation and sexual violence, and it discourages survivors from seeking the help that they need. As educators, we can play a key role in shifting these narratives by fostering supportive and non judgmental environments where students feel safe to ask for help. And we can do this by using trauma informed language when we discuss these topics, reinforcing that the responsibility lies solely with the perpetrator, not the victim, encouraging open and honest conversations about digital safety and consent, and providing students with resources and trusted avenues for support. There are many myths and misconceptions about online sexual exploitation that create barriers for victims in seeking help. and for society in addressing these issues effectively. Let's take a closer look at some of these common myths and the realities behind them. One of the most common myths is that sharing intimate images is not a control issue or a power trip, when the reality is that online sexual abuse, like all forms of sexual violence, is about gaining power and control over another individual. Whether an image is shared to humiliate, manipulate, or coerce, the goal is to assert dominance over the victim. Another common myth is that no one can help or support victims, when the reality is that there are many legal and support resources available to victims of online sexual exploitation, including cybertip.ca, which we'll discuss further, crisis support services, and law enforcement. Victims are not alone, and there is help available. Another common myth is that online sexual abuse is not a big deal. The reality is that the emotional, psychological, and social impacts of online sexual abuse can be severe and long lasting. Victims may experience trauma, anxiety, depression, and social isolation as a result of these experiences. Another myth is that people who send intimate images are quote unquote asking for their photos to be shared, when the reality is that no one deserves to have their own private images shared without their consent. Consent to take or send a photo does not equal consent to distribute it. The responsibility lies with the person who shared the image, not the person in the image. And one of the most common myths is that victims will end up being charged or they will end up on a sex offender list, when the reality is that while sharing an explicit image of a minor is illegal, law enforcement and legal professionals prioritize supporting victims over criminalizing them. There are diversion programs and legal protections in place to help young people who have been affected by these issues. And the last myth that we will discuss is the myth that if you experience online child sexual exploitation, you won't live a full or successful life, when the reality is that many survivors go on to live full, happy, and successful lives. With support, healing is possible, and victims are more than their experience. Breaking the stigma and providing resources can help them move forward in their lives. When having these forms of conversations in the classroom, students often have important questions about online abuse, its consequences, and their rights. Here are some of the most frequently asked questions and some of the key points to know in a response. How common is online abuse? It's estimated that in Canada, 1 in 5 youth have had their intimate image shared without their consent. Additionally, cybertip.ca receives an average of 10 sextortion reports per day. This issue is far more prevalent than many people realize. Another common question, isn't it the victim's fault? Especially when we're discussing instances where a victim may have made their photo available to the perpetrator. Although some victims of non-consensual photo sharing may have taken and sent their image to a potential intimate partner, this does not mean that they are to blame. The responsibility always lies with the person who shared the image without their consent. Victim blaming discourages reporting and reinforces harmful myths about online abuse. Another common question, will I get in trouble for reporting? Victims are not charged for taking an intimate image, even if they took that photo consensually. The law is designed to protect young people from exploitation and ensure they can seek help without fear of legal consequences. How easy is it to get an image removed from online platforms? Image, repro- uh, Image removal depends on the platform. Some platforms respond quickly to reports, while others take more time. The best approach is to use a scanning platform like needhelpnow.ca, which can remove intimate images from multiple sites efficiently. As educators, we can support students by providing them with accurate information, ensuring that they know their rights, and directing them to resources that can help them navigate these difficult situations. Often, educators wonder what they can do to prevent, respond to, and support survivors of online child sexual exploitation and their caregivers. The reality is that educators play a key role in fostering digital safety and creating a supportive environment for their students. By taking a proactive approach and normalizing conversations about online safety, you can help create a school culture that prioritizes the protection and well being of students in the digital world. Even if you feel unsure or uncomfortable with the topic or conversation, there are many different resources that you can leverage to increase awareness and knowledge for your students on the reality of online safety. This can include books, YouTube videos, and even community organization presentations, such as the Dragonfly Center. Students facing online child sexual exploitation often feel trapped and afraid to seek help. Many victims comply with the extorter's demands out of fear, often because they are worried about how adults around them will react. Educators must respond to disclosures with empathy and avoid victim blaming. When responding to a disclosure, keep in mind that empathy is essential, acknowledging the student's feelings and letting them know that they are not alone. Avoid victim blaming. It is never, ever the survivor's fault. The person who shared the image or coerced them is responsible. Validate their concerns. Many students fear disciplinary action or legal consequences. Reassure them that help is available and that they will not be punished. Ensure accountability. Any individual who shares an image without consent must be held responsible. Addressing this as a violation of privacy and consent helps reinforce a culture of respect and safety. Connecting students to resources. Direct students to a trusted adult, school counselor, and online safety organizations that can offer them additional support. By creating a school culture where students feel safe seeking help, educators can play a vital role in reducing harm and preventing further exploitation. Before encountering these situations, it's essential to understand both the laws and your school's policies around mandatory reporting. Being informed ensures that you can act appropriately and in the best interest of the student's safety. The first priority is always to keep students safe. Depending on the situation, this may require different actions, including involving law enforcement, child and family services, or school administration. If you become aware of a case involving sextortion, you can report it to the Cyber Tip Line, a national tip line dedicated to responding to cases of child exploitation. Key steps to take when reporting include ensuring the student's immediate safety and well being, documenting what was disclosed to you in a factual and objective manner, following your school's specific reporting protocols, contacting cybertip.ca or other relevant authorities if online exploitation is involved, connecting the student to appropriate support services. If you are interested in learning more about mandatory reporting, please visit our Understanding Disclosures video on our website. This concludes our quick webinar on online child sexual exploitation, what educators should know. Take some time to review your notes and consider how you can implement what you've learned in your school. If you have any other further questions, refer to the resources provided or connect with the Dragonfly Center for additional support. Thank you for your time and commitment to protecting students in the digital world.